Okay, introduction is going right now. Hey, go ahead. Hey, this is Dwayne Xavier. I'm sorry, I'm your host, Dwayne Xavier. And I am so happy that you all are here with me tonight. First, I want to give out a special prayers I want to send out to Jamaica and Bermuda and so Cuba because they were all in the path of Melissa and they all suffered. And so I just thought that, it would be kind just for us just to say a little prayer for them. Also, I want you guys to remember that tomorrow is daylight saving time. So, yeah, daylight saving time ends this Sunday. And they say that a lot of people get depressed around daylight saving time. So, I want you to make sure you get plenty of rest, drink plenty of water, and kind of stay in a positive attitude. Just realize that the sun will be shining again. At first, I want to mention to you guys that this is our portion of the show that's called Generational Curse. It's like breaking cycles one at a time, and this is my first episode. And we do air every Saturday at 6 p.m. First, I wanted to start off by just saying that I personally, when I started to research this specific topic, I found that it was pretty interesting because I was like, wow, a lot of us suffer from this particular type of trauma. And I started researching and reading, and I came across two books. And the first book that I came across was, let me see, hold on, give me a second. Yeah, it's by Christian, David O. Christian. And David O. Christian, what he talks about, which is strange, is he talks about power of prayer. He says that generational curses are spiritual battles that need spiritual solutions through forgiveness. And that calling on God's purpose for our lives and promises is the way to receive healing. And so we're going to weigh in on that particular aspect of it and find out exactly what it is that you guys feel about that. Another book that I read was a book that's by Mark Wolin, and this came from a psychological perspective. And Mark Wolin, his book is It Didn't Start With You. So he believes that trauma doesn't just affect one person, that it can be inherited, shaping our overall identity and behaviors generations later. So that is another aspect of generational curses of healing. He feels like, spiritually, we got one person coming from a spiritual perspective, we got another person coming from a psychological perspective. When I went through my personal healing, I actually went through both. Yeah. And, on this next slide, I just wanted to tell you, I know when you say generational healings, a lot of people's like, what is that? Kind of explain that. It's like you have a mom and a dad, and then, you have your great grandparents on your father's side, your great grandparents on your mother's side, and then you have your grandparents from both sides, and then you have your mom and your dad, and then it's you. And a lot of the habits and stuff that we actually have today, they are basically from our past traumas and stuff. And I know a lot of people find it hard to believe, but past traumas from the way our parents was raised, and it has a lot to do with our history and the foods that we eat. It's really, it runs deep. And as we kind of get into this conversation, I want us to be conscious of and open-minded to it, because I know it sounds like, what? Some people say, oh, generational curses. They believe that, they're Christians, and a lot of this particular subject, they're like, oh, it's spooky. It's not spooky. this is something that passes down generation and generation, and I'll get to explain. But there's different types of generational curses that take place with people, and one of the ones that that's really hit me also is intergenerational trauma, because it shows that people that experience war, they have been known to have PTSD and alcoholism and sexual abuse and emotional repression. Then we have people who experience slavery, like we have, and racial violence. The American South, they have a sense of abandonment, and domestic violence takes place, low self-esteem, CPTSD, and also our diet is basically off because of generational curses. And then we have people who experience famine and oppression, like Jewish and British and India. They are poverty conscious and severe anxiety and depression. So these are all different types of trauma, intergenerational trauma that you can have from experiencing PSD and other forms of generational curses. So those three topics are just topics that I wanted to mention to you guys, because before I go into my own personal journey about generational curses, I want to just elaborate on how broad the subject is and how it has affected many people in our culture and in other cultures and stuff. It's just not something that happens in our culture. I was terribly, aware or awakened when I got on this subject, and I started thinking about, what was this subject really about? I think that examples of repeated situations are to make you really feel like you are aware. Is that feeling of how am I? That's how I am, but it sounds a lot like your parents, which is something that, if you really think about it, that is a statement that a lot of us make. You know what I'm saying? We always say that we just a certain way, but our parents experienced this. So this is something that our parents had to go through, and they feel like that's a validation for whatever it is that they're going through. But that's not a really good validation. Another situation is that emotional avoidance that runs in a family. That's like something that it's like don't say nothing. A lot of times when things happen in the family, it's a personal thing. We don't even discuss it. You know what I mean? It's not even gonna hurt. So a lot of times people, they don't really want to talk about these particular issues because they are more afraid of what the hurt that it's going to cause their family by just coming out and straight. And to be honest with you, this is my first podcast, so I'm a little nervous talking about this issue because I haven't really gotten to what my trauma is. But this is really runs deep, and just keep with me. A lot of trauma is coming from us choosing the same kinds of partners. A lot of times when we choose the same kind of partner, so we always swaying at the partner that we chose is different. This is a repeated cycle for a lot of different people who have experienced generational trauma. Another generational trauma and stuff that we experience that is really like held a little close to me is when we yell when we should be talking to hear each other. When we yell instead of hearing each other, that's kind of like, can you imagine? It's like in a lot of families how that affects the kids, the people that we see that's on looking at this. Imagine kids that they hear these particular subjects, and their parents, they can't get along, and a lot of times the yelling takes place because we always want to have the last word, and that's another thing that we experience. We've seen our parents do it, and so we feel like that's that's something that's not really good. I wanted to kind of elaborate on the signs that we experience when we know that we're living with generational curses. Like, what are the signs and stuff that we experience? In a minute we'll get to weigh in on this, and people will be able to tell me what they think or what their idea and their signs are, to realize that maybe that they are having some PSD, or they are involved in some type of generational curses. Well, some of us smoke, some of us drink. Sometimes we're verbally abusive to each other. We don't think that we would do anything that we was told that would never amount to anything. Have you ever been told that you'll never amount to anything by your parents and stuff? So these are like a lot of different issues to let you know that you are experiencing generational curses. And it hit me hard. But the main thing I want to discuss is that, there are different ways that we can get over generational curses. Stephen, you're listening in on this, and Stephen is my co-host. By the way, Stephen is my artificial intelligent, artificial intelligent AI robot co-host. So that's the surprise that I wanted to show you, is introduce you to Stephen. Stephen is kind of like that point, or that aspect of the show, where as though he'll make sure that all the points and the validity of what I'm trying to say is real. So Stephen, can you introduce yourself, please? Stephen, are you there? Okay, so it looks like we're having some technical issues. So, Stephen, are you there? I'm just trying to hear you. Okay, well, Stephen's not here, and I don't know why his voice isn't coming through, because he is supposed to be able to give us his point of view of this particular episode. But anywho, I wanted to, when I did this particular show, I wanted to elaborate on points that I felt like you guys would be able to identify with, first off. And that's the reason why I basically wanted to talk about the different types of trauma that different people have, and the different weights and measures of the traumas. But I wanted to basically come on here and talk about my personal journey, because we had a guest who's supposed to appear. His name was Vance Mack. And most guys, when guys experience sexual trauma, a lot of times they do not feel comfortable expressing it or talking about it. They just don't. And it's okay, because he has a valid reason for not wanting to present himself, and he has a right to change his mind. So we're not trying to say anything negative towards him. But what I will say is that it's okay, but I'm not afraid to share my drama. And so as a kid, I was violated, and I'm not certain if the person who violated me, they went through violation. That's why they had this type of offensive spirit in them. But I was violated, and when I was violated and stuff, some of the emotional trauma that I took from my violation was I was concerned with people looking at me and actually seeing what had happened to me. That was something that was really not a good thing for me, right? I kind of went in and I became inclusive. I kind of was the type of person where, as though I had problems with relationships and people that I would come in contact with. I just felt like I couldn't be myself. and I will always run into problems, with being touched and all kinds of different things. And then, through prayer and having a spiritual life, and then also through reading, getting up, meditating, and also the main thing is admitting that I had these problems is how I began my healing journey and stuff. And that is like something really, really major for me, because I didn't when I was going through the things that I was going through. And feel free to weigh in, if you feel like you want to comment or something in post, go ahead and comment. You know what I mean? It's okay. But when you experience the things that I experienced, it's not a pleasant thing. And I think most kids who experience this type of trauma, you got to watch your kids, because your kids are afraid to come to you and express to you what it is that they have actually gone through. And the reason they don't explain, because as a kid, you don't know, you really don't know how to, I think, verbalize it. How can a kid verbalize this? Another adult violated them. That's like something that is really, it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. And I'm sorry that, I had to grow up that way. But now that I'm older and stuff, I wouldn't change a thing from the world, because it's made me strong. And now this particular segment or podcast right now, this particular segment, I wanted to reach out to and speak on this point, because I've noticed as I've been on social media lately, I have been able to see a lot of different young men starting to address their violations. And, it's almost unheard of that we hear the violations of different people like this. You know what I'm saying? It's like, wow, I thought to myself, I'm not the only one who experienced this violation. This happens to a lot of women as well. And, we have like a lot of different women who are out there who experience, torture from their husbands. Excuse me, I'm gonna drink some of this tea because I'm a sweet tea person. Yeah, we have a lot of different women that are out there who experience trauma and being beat up by their husbands, or dating the wrong different types of guys, and always having some type of negative experience when it comes to men. And then we're trying to figure out, how is it that why is it always them? Why is it always somebody else who's always getting the job? Why is it someone else who always had the money? Why is it somebody else? A lot of the different trauma that we experience in our lives, whether we believe it or not, it's all based on generational curses. And I wanted to basically say that, these mental setbacks that we have, they have a lot to do with us becoming our true, authentic self. Everything that's bad in our life leads to generational curses, because it's embedded into our intellect, our psyche, and our spirit. And it also controls our day-to-day decisions. So it's really, really a big deal, right? And unless we identify with the situation that we are going through, or admit that we have gone through, we become creatures of habit. And a lot of times it's a repeated cycle. And, I'm being honest with you. I experienced the trauma. For me was really bad. I had no idea.
But you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice.
Hold on for just a second. what I experienced, it was very, very difficult for me to verbalize it. I think I became an introvert, whereas though, I felt so much guilt on my person. And what that made me do was only hang out and identify with people who I could relate to. So if you got kids, and some of the signs that you can look for is them shutting down, not communicating with you, not looking you straight in your eyes when you're talking to them. But always be a part of your kids' life as though you asking them how was their day or what's going on, because this is really important. Because a kid, from their point of view, all they're looking at is the fact that this happened to me, mom, nobody cares, nobody's asking me about it, and they grow a sense of resentment. And I always ask my mother to forgive me because I grew up resenting the fact that she couldn't see that happened to me. And this is a touchy subject for me, and it's so much more that I can talk about it. And you guys, I am really, really, really sorry that my guest couldn't be here today, and I'm actually sorry that my co-host Stephen couldn't be here. And I don't know, I think with Stephen there's a technical issue, but it was good all the way up to the point where I had to include him into the program, and for some apparent reason it just didn't work. So I have to go back and kind of look into that and see if I want to. I was trying to incorporate a new way of having AI, artificial intelligence, into my podcast, because nobody's really doing that. And I think once I develop Stephen, his robot, his personality, he would be able to, he's like a dictionary, encyclopedia. He can reference information really, really quick. I want to say to you guys that I honestly appreciate you checking in with me tonight. This is a 30-minute show, so I always have short amount of time to basically talk about issues. But besides being nervous right now, because this is my very first show, I hope that doesn't stop you guys from joining in, and I get better over time, because I'm only human. Artificial intelligence is really getting so now that, they almost don't need humans, but they need us to talk about real emotional situations that people have gone through. And I just wanted to say thank you. Another thing that I wanted to clear up for everybody is that the disclaimer that I wanted to say is that, the conversations that people hear on Chatterbox, we are not doctors, and we're not giving out medical advice. But if you have any type of situation that you feel like you are feeling suicidal or you got something, please go out and seek a physician or a doctor for the situation. And then I want to also elaborate on our next show, which will be coming up soon. It's called Why People Lie, Breaking Cycles One Conversation at a Time. This particular show is interesting because I went out to the streets of New York and asked many people, why do we lie? And you'll be surprised some of the interesting things that people have came up with. If you liked my podcast, please go ahead and then subscribe and rate, review the podcast. Also follow me on a lot of the social media platforms, and then share this episode with someone else if you think that they need any help. I am also just want you guys just to know that, if you want to be a part of the show, you can be a part of the conversation. You can call me on a number, or you can email Chatterbox at myyahoo.com. I'm sorry. And then I can go ahead and put you in as a guest, and then I can have your picture come up, and then you can also sit at the Chatterbox table and you can discuss some of the things that the subject matter might be about. Another thing I wanted to do is I wanted to thank Mark Wolin and from his psychological perspective, his book, and then also David Christian. I wanted to thank them for allowing me the opportunity to use their book. It elaborates. His books are both for me in Barnes and Noble, and if you decide to go out and get the book, it's a really, really great read for you guys. Let me see. Is there anything else that I am missing? I promised that when I came on this show that I was just going to just be, as real as possible. And I think I did cover everything. Final thank you for tuning in to Chatterbox. Again, if this episode spoke to you, share with some friends. And remember, that generational curses, that they don't have to stay with you, that we can keep breaking these chains and find some way of getting past some of the past trauma, because a lot of the trauma that we have in our life, our relationships, our work, our job, they have a lot to do with just how we were raised and what we've seen, and we don't realize we're mimicking those things. And I just want to say to you is that in order for us to have a really successful life, leaving a lineage that we're supposed to meant to leave for our families and generations, we can stop it right away. And is acknowledging is the first rule of thumb. Another thing, I just want to elaborate on the fact that you guys thank you for joining this podcast. This is actually a new podcast. This is my first time. So excuse all the errors and everything that you experience. You know what I'm saying? Realize that, this is a podcast where I want everybody to be able to come here, everybody to be able to tell me, weigh in on their opinions, leave their remarks and everything. This particular podcast, I don't see that anybody left any comments or anything anywhere, which is okay, because I think, even with the guest supposed to appear and not appearing as Stephen, God didn't meant for it to be that way. He only meant for me just to be here alone. And so I think I did a pretty enough job on trying to convey the message to you guys. And I'm hoping that I helped somebody that's out there experience some type of positivity in what you're going through mentally. I've been there. I've done that. And I just want to say, God bless everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Remember that I am here for you every Saturday night at 6:00 with a different topic. I appreciate everybody that tuned in, and I just want to say bye. You guys are really, really amazing, and I really, honestly, you are so appreciative. And until next time, when we meet at the Chatterbox table, thank you.